Science of parenting materials on Staylistening, which are almost entirely about crying, sweating, tantruming, that kind of thing. And one thing that I think it's really important to emphasize when you're teaching this material is that crying is a natural process. It's a natural physiological process to relieve stress. It's good for you. I would see the men in my building emotional understanding classes relax a little bit as it sinks in when I'm telling them tears are composed of stress hormones. Tears are literally washing stress hormones out of your body to make it easier for your body to come back to equilibrium. It's a good thing. Let the kids, let them cry a little bit. So, being close to a child that's crying or upset or cranky or off track gives both of you a benefit. So, just the way that being really present with somebody in your weekly call that's really upset and you're there listening to them, when they're sort of through their process around what's happened, you can feel more relaxed. You can feel yourself come closer into that equilibrium. That's the same thing that happens with your kids. It's a system. There's no such thing as an individual human mind. You're always attuning to the people that are around you. You're always adjusting. You're always aware and part of the system that you're physically connected to, or that you've made a mental connection, an abstract connection across the phone with a woman in Australia or Italy or wherever, Hungary, who's upset. You can benefit from that connection even though you're not physically together. So, crying is the child's way of relieving stress, healing feelings of upset. Being close to them brings you into the system, and especially being close to them when you have something different to offer that system, like you got really, really scared coming down that huge slide when my daughter was little. She wasn't even 1.5 years old, and it was hot, and so she was just in a diaper. And we were at this great park that we call Crayon Park, and the big kids had slides that were built into the hillside. And so there were these long slides into this big mulch pit at the bottom. And they were pouring water on the slides to go down them even faster because it was so hot. And my toddler, who had no fear of anything ever, in a diaper designed to repel water, slides down this wet, huge, 2-story slide, launching her little skinny self deeply into a pile of mulch. And she did it kind of like skidding on one side into the haystack of mulch. And I could hear her screaming at the bottom. She was so mad, she could not walk. She was all scraped up on one side of her body. And, being her mother, I was no help at all, because I was completely freaked out that she had gone through this slide and now she couldn't walk, and what happened to her, and I couldn't get to her because she's way down the hill. And so a friend of mine came with me to collect her and was able to see, she had 4 kids. She was on her 4th, who was the same age as my first. And she knew nobody was dead, and she knew that by the time we stood around long enough in the ER at Stanford for somebody to see us, that she would have healed on her own. And she wasn't worried at all, and she could listen to Davis screeching her head off, stumbling around. She's on one foot because she couldn't walk on the other leg, and she was like determined to make it work somehow. But she could add something different to the system. She could add that confidence that everything really was okay. So Davis could be really upset, and I could be really freaked out. And then we could all come to equilibrium. So when you've got something like that that you could add to the system, then it creates a different experience for everybody that's part of that system. So when the child's upset, when they're having a tantrum, this is a big thing for parents. It's like, I can't sanction that kind of bad behavior. If I listen to my screeching, tantruming child in the supermarket, then that's going to reinforce that behavior. Okay, so don't listen to the Labrador when it cries. Do your thing. But the kid doesn't really work that way. It's not a reinforcement of bad behavior to listen to someone that's upset. It's allowing them to use a natural healing process that you can be part of and support. A child crying alone somewhere, or upset or tantruming, outside of the circle of someone's generous attention is at best a neutral experience. It is not cathartic and healing in the same way as being listened to and being joined in a system with someone who's got good attention, who can listen. You know, the kids are not going to die from crying alone in their room, but they're not going to heal either. So whatever it is they're crying about, remember how Patty was saying earlier, acting out an upset can sort of entrench it? That's because all the neurons that created that situation are firing together over and over. They experience that situation. So you can be re-stimulated by an experience that does not yet have somebody to listen to it, and you're just running those same circuits. You know, your poor friend home from Vietnam or Saudi Arabia or wherever these days, from the Gulf, that goes off at the fireworks or loud noises or car backfiring or whatever. They're running the same circuitry of trauma, but they're not healing that trauma because they don't have the ballast from another part of there's no one joining them in accepting that feeling, that emotional process. So it's very similar to the neurochemistry, the neuroscience of therapy. It's joining your patient in that space and allowing them a safe space while at the same time holding in your head that they're perfectly safe. No one is shooting at them. And so there are two worlds happening at once, and they color one another. And the experience of being met in that emotional space uses new circuitry. It uses and it gets encoded differently in the brain. It gets remembered differently because of that sharing.